Okay, I put a post up on the blog of my website about this issue of government tort claims, and I'm going to do a video about it too because I think it's such an important issue. And it's kind of hard, I think, for people to understand how this all works. And I really don't want people to lose the opportunity to bring the types of claims that are precluded if you don't file these tort forms in the first place. So let me lay out the landscape a little bit, and I'll talk about how to go about doing this in general. Civil rights cases, which are what I practice in or on, involve a lot of complicated areas of overlapping law. And one of the ways that the law can overlap is that there can be, for a given problem or a given situation, there can be federal causes of action, and there can also be causes of action under state law, which in my case is California state law. And for the federal causes of action, a person can just go to court most of the time, unless they're in prison or something, in which case there's additional procedural hoops they got to jump through. But if you're just a person out on the street, you can go to federal court with your case with federal causes of action. But to bring causes of action under California law, under the law of the state of California, there's an additional procedural hoop you got to go through first, which is to file what's called a government tort claim form. You have to file that with the agency that is responsible for what you're claiming occurred, and then you got to get a turn down from the agency, and then you can proceed on to court. So it's like a little barrier procedurally that you have to go through before heading to court. The reason why that is important is because state causes of action can be really powerful in civil rights cases. First of all, federal civil rights claims under federal law, tend to be subject to qualified immunity. And qualified immunity is this very broad, amorphous set of doctrines that shield government actors from liability unless there's real clear precedent establishing that what they did was illegal. But that qualified immunity regime does not apply under California law. And the standard of proof under some state causes of action, like negligence or like the Bain Act in California, can be somewhat more forgiving to the plaintiff than the federal cause of action. So for both of those reasons, it's really advantageous to plaintiffs to get the state causes of action preserved by filing this tort claim, which is a prerequisite to then going to court with those state causes of action. The deadline for doing it generally is 6 months after the incident occurred that gives rise to the case, whether it's like a use of excessive force or some sort of retaliation or whatever. You got 6 months to go ahead and file that thing. And the challenge I think that creates for people is that by the time 6 months rolls around, a lot of folks are just barely beginning to think about, gosh, do I want to bring a case or not? And who might be my lawyer? Who are the lawyers who work on this stuff? And when does it cost something or what? And that deadline comes up. And so there can be this challenge of like needing to file these tort claim forms when counsel hasn't even been arranged yet. And so the individual sometimes is in the position of trying to figure out, how do I do this? And the thing that I think is tricky about it is that tort claims have to be, as I said, filed against the agency that we're saying is responsible. But that could be dozens of different agencies all around the state of California. Because think about it, if we're talking about a police officer, the police officer typically works for a police department, which is in turn part of a city government. If the person who's the defendant is a sheriff's deputy, they typically work for the county. If the person we're talking about works for the California Highway Patrol, then they work for the California Highway Patrol and for the state of California. If they're a correctional officer in state prison, they work for the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, which is part of the state of California. So all of these different, and there's even more permutations than that. We talk about teachers and principals, then you need to go against the school board or the school district. And I could go on. Point is, there's lots and lots of different municipalities and government structures that can potentially be involved in these types of cases, and they all have their own forms. Everybody's got their own form. There's not that much uniformity around how you submit the form to any particular place. There's not like one central place where you go to fill out these forms. Instead, what you really have to do is Google it. If you want to file a suit against the city of San Jose, you're going to want to Google that, City of San Jose Government Tort Claim Form. If you want to bring a case against the County of San Diego, you're going to want to Google that, County of San Diego Government Tort Claim Form. And most of the time, what you will find is that the municipalities have on their websites either a form that you can print out and fill out, or they have these days kind of a portal, like some sort of online window that you can fill out the data and submit your stuff, and then you'll get some kind of confirmation that the claim is being processed. But I think the trick in the first place is just to figure out where do you go, because it's not, as I say, it's centralized. It's in a gajillion different places all over the state, and you have to find the right agency for your particular situation. That can also be tricky because sometimes these situations that give rise to civil rights cases involve overlapping actors, right? There could be, and I give an example in the blog post. Suppose in a jail, there's sheriff's deputies who are ignoring the situation of a person with mental illness, and there are also private nurses or private psychologists who are also ignoring the situation of a person with mental illness, and something bad happens to that person. Well, now you've got the sheriff or the county of whatever place potentially on the hook, and the private actors may also have been negligent or engaged in some other sort of tortious behavior. You're not required to file a tort claim against the private actors, but it can be tricky because you don't necessarily know who did what, right? Because you're going to be working with limited information. So the point is that you have to be over-inclusive when you fill out these forms. Just allege what you know, but broadly. Let's see what else is in this article. One issue that folks have sometimes, is that people feel a little shy about putting down their social security number or their date of birth or whatever other personal information. And as I say in the article, Government Code 910, Government Code Section 910 of the California Government Code, spells out what are the actual requirements for what has to be in these tort claim forms. There's no requirement that you give your social security number. So the fact that agencies want that information that's good for them, but you don't have to provide that unless the portal is set up in such a way that you're forced to give it, in which case, arguably, that agency might be violating the law, I think, by requiring that data to be input just to file a tort claim form. But, don't fight that fight. You probably just got to get this thing filed, worry about those other issues at another time. As I say, you might not know the names of everybody. You might not know, like, if they work for private companies or whatever. That's okay. It doesn't matter. Just say what you know. And in a similar vein, you might not know like what causes of action are at issue in this case. You're not a lawyer, let's say. You just know something bad happened, and you know that some people probably were at fault for it. You're not required to spell that all out. It's not your job as the person filing a tort claim form to say it was 42 U.S.C. 1983 or it was a violation of the whatever amendment. You just describe the incident and the injury and describe it in detail. That's what's required, not the sort of legalisms of all that. Finally, not finally, but another important piece of this is to keep a clear record of what occurred. Keep a clear record of the fact that you filed the form. The best thing I think is really to submit these things in person and get a file stamped copy of your record. But if you can do it through email and get a digital confirmation right away, that's great. The only real pitfall, I think, is submitting it through the mail if you don't do it certified, because how are you going to show after the fact that you did, in fact, mail it if it gets lost? And that matters because municipalities will say, oh, you never filed it. We never received that. And now you've just forfeited your state claims. So you really want to have that certified mail, return receipt requested approach if you're going to go through the snail mail. And let's see, two other things I wanted to mention are, first, although there is this 6-month deadline to file these claims, Sometimes it's possible within up to 1 year to file the claim anyway, file it late. That typically requires some help or some additional factors that have to be spelled out in the request for the late claim. So you might want to get help with that from an attorney. And broadly speaking, I want to say that if I can be helpful to you in dealing with government tort claim forms, please get in touch, because I can't take tons of cases. I'm just one person. I'm just a solo. But I feel very strongly about people's access to courts. I really want to help people preserve their rights and pursue these things in whatever way they can, even if the cases seem kind of marginal. I don't care about that aspect. I just want people to have their rights. So if I can be helpful, let me know. I'll help without charge or whatever. I just want to make sure that this stuff gets done so that the rights are preserved and the causes of action stay alive. And then, let the courts sort it out later. Or if you want to take it to another lawyer, great. I really don't care. But keep your case alive in the first place by getting those claims in a timely way. Thanks, and talk to you later.